There are humiliations a person can forget once the years have softened their edges, and there are others that stay sharp enough to draw blood whenever memory brushes against them. Hunger is like that. So is being laughed at while you are trying to keep someone you love alive. But sometimes the worst moment of a life is only a doorway, and the hand that opens it does not always come from where you expected. Hannah Harmon stood at the counter of Bellwether Mercantile with both hands clenched around an empty blue purse. Outside, November wind drove dust and splinters of snow on the main street of Copper Ridge, Montana territory. Inside, the store smelled of kerosene, wool, dried apples, and the open barrel of salt beside Hannah's skirt. Shelves crowded the walls from floor to ceiling, heavy with flour sacks, coffee tins, lamp chimneys, nails, molasses, patent medicine, and bolts of cloth too bright for the season. Mr. Silas Bellwether held Hannah's silver hair comb between two fingers as if it had been pulled from a gutter. "That all?" he asked. Hannah swallowed. "It belonged to my mother." "Then I expect your mother paid more for it than I will." A few men near the stove laughed. The sound was not loud, but it filled the store. On the counter sat the things Hannah had asked for: a 5-pound sack of flour, a paper twist of salt, 2 ounces of quinine, and a small tin of condensed milk. Behind her, her 8-year-old brother Eli waited near the door, shivering inside a coat that had once belonged to their father. His cheeks were too pale. Every few breaths, a cough bent him nearly double. Hannah kept her eyes on the ledger beneath Bellwether's hand. "You know, I'll work it off," she said. "Washing, mending, scrubbing the back room. Whatever you need." Bellwether leaned his belly against the counter. "Your account already says whatever I need." He turned the ledger so the black figures faced her. $4.87. It might as well have been 400. Hannah opened the blue purse again, though they both knew it held nothing but a broken button and a folded scrap of paper bearing the address of a dead aunt in Helena. "I can pay after spring," she said. "Spring does not pay Denver suppliers in November." Eli coughed behind her. Bellwether glanced toward him, then lowered his voice, just enough to make his cruelty seem private. "Folks who cannot afford medicine are to learn not to fall sick." The men by the stove laughed again. "Before we go farther, tell us where you are listening from tonight. And if this story reaches someplace tender in you, please like it, share it, and subscribe. Now come back into that cold little store, where one quiet choice was about to change 2 lives." Hannah's face burned. She reached for the hair comb. Bellwether pulled it away. "You offered a trade. I changed my mind. A bargain is a bargain. You said it was worthless. Worthless to you, perhaps. I might find a buyer. Give it back." Someone shifted in the shadow between the harness rack and the stacked feed sacks. Hannah had noticed the man when she entered, though only in the way one noticed a dark coat hanging from a peg. He was tall, broad through the shoulders, and still enough to be mistaken for part of the store. Snow melted along the brim of his black hat. A scar ran from the corner of his left eye into the rough brown beard on his cheek. He stepped forward. The laughter stopped. Noah Hawthorne laid a folded banknote on the counter. It was only $5, but it landed with the weight of a hammer. "The woman asked for her comb," he said. Bellwether's smile turned cautious. "This is no concern of yours, Hawthorne." Noah looked at the items on the counter, then at Eli by the door. "Put them in a sack," I said. "This is no. Put them in a sack." Noah did not raise his voice. Men who had heard it before knew he did not need to. Bellwether's fingers tightened around the comb. "You planning to make a habit of settling every worthless account in town?" Hannah flinched, but Noah did not look away from the shopkeeper. "I'm settling this one." Bellwether glanced toward the men near the stove. None met his eye. He shoved the comb across the counter and swept the flour, salt, quinine, and milk into a brown paper sack. Noah pushed the banknote closer. Bellwether opened the till. $4.13 chain. Credit it to Miss Harmon. Hannah turned sharply. No. Noah looked at her for the first time. His eyes were gray, not cold exactly, but guarded in the way of a house whose shutters had been nailed closed for winter. I didn't ask you to, she said. No, I cannot repay $5. I paid for goods worth 87 cents. I'll put the rest against my ledger. No, Noah said. He want? Bellwether's face reddened. You cannot tell me how to keep my books. Noah opened the ledger, took the pencil from beside it, and drew a hard line through Hannah's name. Then he wrote paid. Bellwether sputtered. That is my property. Noah set the pencil down. So was the comb. For a moment, only the wind spoke, pressing dry snow against the windows. Then Noah lifted the sack and carried it to Eli. The boy stared up at him. You Hannah Harmon's brother? Noah asked. Eli nodded. Can you walk? I walked here. That was not my question. Eli tried to straighten. Another cough caught him. Noah handed Hannah the sack, bent, and lifted the boy as carefully as if he were made of thin glass. Hannah's pride rose at once. Put him down. Hayes fevered. I know. Where do you live? That is none of your concern. Noah looked at Eli's boots. The soles were split, and snowmelt had soaked through the rags, wrapped around his feet. It became my concern when Bellwether started using a sick child for sport. Bellwether muttered something from behind the counter. Noah turned his head. Bellwether found urgent work among the receipt papers. Hannah slipped her mother's comb into the blue purse. Her hand shook. She hated that Noah saw it. We live in the old Harmon place beyond the south pasture, she said, near Dry Willow Creek. That roof still standing, most of it, then leaked. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to take Eli from him, gather the sack to her chest, and walk out with what remained of her dignity. But Eli had stopped shivering against Noah's coat. Hannah opened the door. The wind struck them with such force that the bell above the frame gave a frantic little cry. Noah's horse stood hitched beside a freight wagon, a tall bay gelding with a dark mane crusted in snow. He settled Eli on the wagon seat and wrapped him in a buffalo robe. Hannah climbed beside him. You can leave us at the south turn, she said. Noah untied the reins. I can. He did not. The wagon rolled out of Copper Ridge beneath a sky the color of gunmetal. Buildings thinned into fenced lots, then into open country patched with sage and frozen grass. The wagon wheels groaned over ruts. Hannah kept one arm around Eli and the brown paper sack pressed to her lap. Noah drove without speaking. His hands were bare. A long burned scar crossed the back of his right wrist. Hannah found herself staring at it. He noticed. Stovepipe, he said. I did not ask. No. Eli shifted beneath the rope. Mr. Hawthorne. Noah glanced over. Do you live on the mountain? Near it? Do wolves come near your house? Sometimes. Do you shoot them? Only when they come for the stock. Eli considered that. Hannah says wolves are hungry same as anything. Hannah sounds sensible. She is. Hannah looked away before Noah could see how the simple defense affected her. The old Harmon place stood in a hollow beyond Dry Willow Creek, where cottonwoods leaned over a narrow strip of ice. The house had once been white. Now the boards were gray, the porch sagged, and 2 windows had been covered with flour sacking. Half the chimney had crumbled after the first frost. Noah pulled the wagon to a stop. His gaze moved from the roof to the empty wood pile. How long has he been ill? 3 days. Doctor see him. Dr. Ames was called to a berth north of town. You've been burning furniture. Hannah looked toward the smoke curling thinly from the broken chimney. No, Noah climbed down and carried Eli inside. The front room held a table, 2 chairs, a small iron stove, and the remains of a walnut sideboard missing 1 shelf. The air was colder than the store. A kettle sat over a weak flame fed by chopped fence rails. Noah's jaw shifted. Set him on the bed, Hannah said. The bedroom had no door, only a faded quilt hung across the frame. Noah laid Eli beneath patched blankets, while Hannah mixed quinine into warm water. Eli made a face after drinking. "Bitter," he whispered. "Then it is probably doing its job," Hannah said. Noah stood just inside the room, hat in his hands. Hannah waited for him to leave. Instead, he said, "You have an axe?" "Behind the house." "Behind the house? Sharp enough." "It is not." She drew herself up. "You have inspected it already." "No." A sharp axe would mean wood. Her mouth tightened. Noah put on his hat. "I'll bring a load before dark." "You have done enough." "I have done 87 cents worth." "You did $5 worth." I did not give Bellwether $5 for you." "What did you give it for?" His eyes moved to Eli. Silence. Then he left. Hannah stood at the window and watched him drive away. She expected relief. Instead, the room felt emptier than before. Eli slept through the afternoon. Hannah stirred a thin paste of flour and condensed milk over the stove, then spread it between two cracked plates to cool. Every few minutes, she touched the back of her fingers to his brow. Near sunset, she heard the sound of an axe. Noah Hawthorne stood beyond the window, splitting pine into clean, pale lengths. A mule-drawn sled rested near the porch, loaded with logs from the mountain. Hannah went outside without her shawl. "What are you doing?" "Wood." "I can see that." "Then we agree. You cannot keep bringing things here." He set another log upright. "Why?" "Because people will talk." "They already do. You do not know what they say about me." Noah swung the axe. The blade sank through the wood with one clean crack. "They say you are proud." Her hands curled against the cold. "They say worse." "I have heard worse. About me." "About me." He split another log. Hannah studied his face. Copper Ridge had stories about Noah Hawthorne. Some said he had killed a man in Idaho. Some said he had abandoned a wife. Some said he lived alone because his temper had driven every hired hand from Hawthorne Ridge. Noah stacked the split wood beneath the eaves. "You need a new stovepipe," he said. "And the roof over the back room is gone. I know what my house needs." "Good." He carried an armload inside. Hannah followed, angry because she could not stop him and angrier because the stove caught quickly when he fed it seasoned pine. Warmth began to press outward through the room. Noah checked Eli's breathing, then stood. "His cough sounds deep." "I know. Bring him to my place tomorrow." Hannah stared. "Why?" "My sister left medicines." "Your sister?" "She was a nurse before she married." "Where is she now?" "Debt." The word settled between them. Noah picked up his gloves from the table. "The house is higher and warmer. I have food enough." "Nuggets." "Dr. Ames stops there on Thursdays to see one of my hands." "I will not move into a stranger's house." "I did not ask you to move in. You asked me to carry my sick brother onto a mountain in November. I asked you to bring him somewhere the roof does not leak." Hannah's face heated. Noah's expression did not soften, but something behind it did. "One night," he said, "let the doctor see him. Then decide." Eli coughed behind the quilt. Hannah closed her eyes. "One night," Noah nodded. He left a bundle beside the stove. After he had gone, Hannah opened it. Inside were wool socks, a cake of lye soap, 2 candles, and a loaf of brown bread wrapped in a clean dish towel. There was no note. At dawn, Noah returned with a horse and a narrow sleigh. He did not mention the bundle. Hannah had packed everything they owned into one wooden trunk, though she told herself it was because leaving valuables in an empty house was foolish. The trunk held 2 dresses, Eli's extra shirt, their father's Bible, a chipped wash basin, 3 spoons, a sewing basket, and the blue purse. Noah lifted it onto the sleigh. "Thought this was one night," he said. "It is." He looked at the trunk. Hannah lifted her chin. "Do you object?" "No." Hawthorne Ridge rose, north of Copper Ridge, in a long pine-dark shoulder above the valley. Noah's ranch sat where the timber broke into a wide meadow, with a low stone house. 2 barns, corrals, a bunkhouse, and a smokehouse tucked near a spring. The place was not grand, it was simply solid. Its roofs did not sag. Its chimney drew properly. Its fences met their posts without apology. A red-haired boy of about 10 stood at the barn door holding a pitchfork taller than himself. Beside him was a smaller girl in a man's old coat, her braids uneven. They watched the sleigh approach without weaving. Noah helped Hannah down. "Those are my sister's children," he said, "Caleb and Ruth." Hannah had not known there were children. The girl looked at Eli. "Is he dying?" "Ruth," Noah said. "What?" "He looks poorly." Eli pushed himself upright beneath the robe. "I am not dying." Ruth considered him. "Good." Caleb snores, "and I need somebody else to blame." Caleb frowned at her. Noah carried Eli inside. The house was warmer than any place Hannah had entered since her father's death. The front room had thick rugs, a stone hearth, shelves of books, and a long pine table scarred by knives and hot pans. Yet it carried the untouched feeling of a room preserved after a funeral. A woman's yellow shawl still hung on a peg by the stairs. A wooden horse lay beneath a bench, one wheel missing. Noah put Eli in a small room near the kitchen. "You and your brother take this room," he said, "and the children upstairs." "Where do you sleep? Bunkhouse?" "This is your house." "It was my sister's." He said it so quietly, Hannah did not answer. Dr. Ames arrived near noon with snow in his eyebrows and weariness in his coat. He listened to Eli's lungs, examined his throat, and asked Hannah about the fever. "Pneumonia beginning," he said. "Not the worst I've heard, but close enough. Keep him warm. Broth. Steam if the coughing tightens. Quinine for the fever." Hannah glanced at Noah. He stood near the door, arms crossed. Dr. Ames packed his instruments. "You did right bringing him here." "Wu came for one night," Hannah said. The doctor looked from Hannah to the snow thickening beyond the window. "Then make it a long night." The storm lasted 4 days. By the second evening, the road vanished beneath drifts. By the third, the mountain wind howled around the stone house and drove fine snow through cracks in the shutters. Noah and the ranch hands worked from dark to dark, keeping cattle sheltered, breaking ice in the troughs, and carrying hay through waist-deep snow. Hannah stayed beside Eli. She boiled water on the stove and draped blankets over the bed to hold the steam. She measured quinine, coaxed broth between his lips, changed sweat-soaked linen, and slept sitting upright with one hand resting on his narrow chest. Ruth watched from the doorway. "Did your mother teach you sick care?" the girl asked. "My mother taught me most things. Mine did too." The words were plain. The grief inside them was not. Hannah looked at the uneven braids. "Come here." Ruth approached cautiously. "Who has been doing your hair?" "Caleb." "That explains a great deal." Ruth's mouth twitched. Hannah found a comb and redid the braids neatly. Ruth sat still at first, then leaned back against Hannah's knees. Noah came in carrying an armload of wood. He stopped when he saw them. Ruth noticed him. "Uncle Noah says braids are foolish because they come loose." "He is mistaken." Noah put the wood beside the stove. Often that night, Eli's fever climbed. His breathing turned shallow. Hannah pressed cold cloths to his neck, while fear crawled through her like ice water. Noah returned from the barns after midnight. Snow covered his coat and beard. He took one look at Hannah's face, stripped off his gloves, and sat on the other side of the bed. "What do I do?" he asked. "Hold him up." Noah lifted Eli against his chest, while Hannah poured steaming water into a basin and added pine needles from the bundle Dr. Ames had left. They bent over the vapor together, Eli between them. Hours passed. The lamp burned low. Once, Hannah's hand slipped from exhaustion. Noah caught the basin before it overturned. "You should sleep," he said. "So should you. Cattle do not take medicine. Neither do stubborn men." His gaze met hers over Eli's damp hair. For the first time, She saw the faintest suggestion of a smile. Near dawn, Ela's breathing deepened. The fever broke in a rush of sweat. Hannah bowed her head over the blanket. Noah remained still, holding the boy until Hannah could trust her legs again. "You saved him," she whispered. "No, you brought us here. You kept him breathing." Their hands were both beneath Eli's shoulders. Hannah felt the roughness of Noah's palm against her fingers. Neither moved away at once. When the storm ended, the world outside lay transformed. Snow rounded every fence rail and barn roof. The sky shone blue and hard above the ridge. Eli was weak, but improving. Hannah packed the trunk. Noah found it closed beside the bedroom door. "Road is not cleared. ID will be by noon. Your house will be colder than before. We have wood, not enough. I cannot stay here indefinitely." Noah looked toward the kitchen, where Ruth and Eli were building a fort from kindling, while Caleb pretended not to help them. "The children need lessons," he said. Hannah blinked. "What?" Caleb reads. Ruth guesses. "I do not guess," Ruth called from the kitchen. "I remember parts." Noah lowered his voice. "The house needs keeping. Mrs. Cobb comes twice a week, but her husband broke his leg. The children need meals that are not burned." "I heard that," Ruth said. "So did the potatoes," Noah replied. Hannah looked at him. "You are offering me employment for the winter. What wages?" $8 a month. "Room and board for you and Eli, $8. It was more than she could earn scrubbing floors in town, if anyone hired her at all. What would people say? Noah's jaw tightened. People do not live here. They speak in town. Town is 7 miles away. 7 miles does not stop a tongue. No. He lifted the trunk and carried it back into the room. Hannah stared after him. "I have not agreed." "No, you are very sure of yourself." "No." That answer stopped her. Noah set the trunk beside the wall and turned. "I am sure the children need you. I am sure your brother needs warmth. I am sure you need money." Hannah's pride flared. His voice softened. "I am not sure you will stay." She looked at the yellow shawl hanging near the stairs, at the neat shelves gathering dust, at the children kneeling together among the kindling. 1 month, she said. Noah nodded. 1 month. Hannah began with the kitchen. It was a fine kitchen badly used, with copper pots blackened by neglect, a flour bin full of weevils, and cupboards stocked according to the tastes of men who believed coffee, bacon, and beans were the 3 pillars of human survival. She emptied everything onto the table. Noah entered at midday and stopped. "What happened?" "I found the kitchen. It was there this morning." "No art. This morning there was a storage shed with a stove." Caleb snorted into his sleeve. Hannah made Noah carry the flour bin outside. She scrubbed shelves with lye soap, sorted dried beans, discarded rancid fat, and set Ruth to wiping jars. Caleb repaired the loose pantry latch. Eli, propped in a chair, counted potatoes and objected whenever Ruth stole one to roll across the floor. That evening, Hannah served chicken stew thick with barley, onions, and carrots from the root cellar. She baked biscuits in a Dutch oven and placed a jar of preserved plums on the table. Noah sat at the head out of habit, then looked around as if the room belonged to someone else. Ruth broke open a biscuit. "Steam," she whispered. Caleb ate 2 bowls without speaking. Noah tasted the stew. Hannah watched from across the table. "Well," he swallowed, "it is hot, I had noticed." He took another spoonful. "It is good," Ruth grinned. "He is very good." Noah looked at the girl. "You have become talkative." "I have become fat." The following morning, Hannah found an empty bowl beside the wash basin, scraped so clean it hardly needed water. She smiled before she could stop herself. Days settled into a pattern. Noah rose before dawn. Hannah heard his boots cross the front room while she stirred ashes in the kitchen stove. By the time he returned from the barns, Coffee waited in the blue enamel pot. At first he drank standing. Then Hannah began leaving a plate near his cup. Eggs, fried potatoes, bread spread with apple butter. One morning he sat. He did not announce the change. Neither did she. Hannah taught lessons after breakfast. Caleb worked figures in Noah's old ranch ledger. Ruth read from a battered primer, moving one finger beneath each word. Eli recovered enough strength to join them, though his cough lingered. In the afternoons, Hannah mended. The house contained enough torn clothing to clothe a regiment badly. She repaired Caleb's shirts, patched Noah's work coat, hemmed Ruth's dresses, and turned an old wool blanket into a jacket for Eli. Noah noticed everything and mentioned almost nothing. One evening he left a new pair of shears beside Hannah's sewing basket. Another day, she found a sack of lampblack, linseed oil, and brushes near the pantry. "What are these for?" she asked. "The kitchen walls. They're not part of my wages." "No. You expect me to paint them?" "No." "Then why did you buy paint?" "You looked at the walls." "That is not an answer. It is the only one I have." She painted the walls cream. Ruth insisted on a narrow border of yellow near the ceiling. Caleb complained, then climbed the ladder and painted half of it himself. Noah came in after dark and stood in the doorway, hat in his hands. The yellow line caught the lamplight. For one brief second the grief on his face was naked. Hannah lowered her brush. "Your sister liked yellow." He looked toward the shawl by the stairs. "Yes, I can paint over it." "No." The answer came too quickly. He stepped inside. "Leave it." The object from Noah's past appeared by accident. Hannah was cleaning the upstairs linen press when she found a small cedar box pushed behind folded quilts. Inside lay a woman's wedding ring, a lock of chestnut hair tied with green thread, and a charred child's shoe. Noah stood in the doorway before she heard him. His face changed when he saw the open box. Hannah closed it at once. "I am sorry. You had no business." "No." He crossed the room and took the box. His hands were steady, but the scar on his wrist had gone white. "I was looking for sheets," Hannah said. "You found them." "I did not mean to pry." "You did?" The words struck harder because they were quiet. Noah carried the box downstairs. That evening, he did not come to supper. Hannah kept his coffee warm until the lamp burned low. At last, she found him in the barn sitting on an overturned bucket outside a mare's stall. The mare breathed softly over his shoulder. Hannah set a tin cup beside him. "You need not explain," she said. "No." She waited. Snow tapped against the barn roof. Noah stared into the dark aisle. "My wife's name was Clara." Hannah had not known there had truly been a wife. She sat on a bale of hay several feet away. "We had a boy," he continued. "Thomas, 3 years old." The mare shifted. "There was a fire in our cabin in Idaho. Stovepipe cracked while I was away buying seed. My neighbor pulled Clara out. Could not reach the boy." Hannah thought of the burn scar. "You went back inside too late. And Clara." "She lived 3 days." The barn seemed to contract around the words. Noah rubbed one tomb over the rim of the cup. She asked where Thomas was. "I told her he was asleep." Hannah's throat tightened. That was merciful. It was a lie. Sometimes mercy wears the same coat. He looked at her then. The line might have sounded wise from someone else. From Hannah, it came only as recognition. "My father died in debt," she said. "He borrowed after my mother passed. Then he borrowed to repay what he borrowed. By the end, every knock at the door made Eli hide under the table. Noah said nothing. The day father was buried, Bellwether came for the milk cow. He took it. I stood in the gate with a pitchfork. Noah's mouth moved slightly. "What happened?" "He decided the cow was not worth being stabbed over." "Was he?" "No doubt." "She was mean and nearly dry." The faint smile came again, then disappeared. Hannah lifted the cup and placed it in his hand. "I am sorry about your boy." Noah looked down at the coffee. "I am sorry about your cow." It was less than either of them meant. It was enough. As December deepened, Hawthorne Ridge became less silent. Ruth sang while peeling potatoes. Caleb argued with Eli over arithmetic. Hannah opened curtains that had remained closed for 2 years and placed pine branches along the mantel. The ranch hands began finding reasons to come to the kitchen door around supper. Noah pretended not to notice when Hannah expanded the evening meal. She learned the men's names: Amos Pike, who had lost 2 fingers to frostbite; Ben Mercer, who read dime novels beneath his blanket; Tomas Vega, who could mend any saddle but not his own socks. She found Noah's account books in poor order and offered to help. "I know my numbers," he said. "Your numbers are currently living in 6 different ledgers. I know where they are." "Then where is the October cattle tally?" He looked toward the shelf. Hannah waited. Noah sighed. "Somewhere." She organized the books by year and expense. Within a week she found that Bellwether had overcharged the ranch repeatedly for freight, nails, coffee, and seed. Noah stood beside her at the table as she showed him. "He charged $9 for a keg of nails," she said. "The invoice says 6. Could be handling. $3 handling. He has delicate hands." She looked up. Noah's face remained solemn, but his eyes did not. Hannah turned another page. "This has happened for at least 2 years. I did not check closely." "You should have." Zars. She expected irritation. Instead, Noah pulled out a chair. "Teach me what you see." They spent 3 evenings over the ledgers. Hannah showed him how Bellwether shifted charges between columns and carried balances forward twice. Noah listened, asked careful questions, and never pretended to understand what he did not. On the 4th evening, he rode into town. He returned after dark with a swollen knuckle and a receipt stating that Bellwether owed Hawthorne Ridge $41.20. Hannah stared at his hand. "Did you strike him?" "No, what happened?" "He shut the ledger on my fingers." "You expect me to believe that?" "No." She cleaned the split skin with warm water. Noah sat at the kitchen table while the children slept upstairs. "You should not fight on my account," she said. "It was my account. You would not have looked without me." "No." She wrapped linen around his knuckles. His hand was large beneath hers, scarred from rope, cold, and work. "Hannah," she glanced up. Noah rarely used her given name. His eyes rested on her face. "Thank you." She tied the bandage and let go. After Christmas, gossip reached the mountain. Mrs. Ada Cobb returned to help with washing and brought news along with her soap basket. "Folks say Miss Harmon has made herself comfortable," she announced while wringing a sheet. Hannah froze beside the tub. Mrs. Cobb was not unkind. That made the words worse. "What do they mean?" Mrs. Cobb's cheeks pinked. "You know towns, I know words. They say Mr. Hawthorne paid your debt and carried you off before the ink dried. He carried Eli, I know that. Do they?" Mrs. Cobb looked down at the sheet. Hannah scrubbed harder. "They say a woman does not live under a bachelor's roof for wages alone." Noah stood outside the washroom door. Neither woman had heard him approach. He carried a broken harness strap in one hand. Mrs. Cobb went pale. Noah looked at Hannah, not her. "Is that what they say?" Hannah lifted her chin. "Does it matter?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because it hurts you." Mrs. Cobb began gathering her basket. Noah stepped aside to let her pass. "Tell them Miss Harmon is employed as teacher and housekeeper," he said. "Tell them she has earned every dollar." "I will," Mrs. Cobb whispered. "And tell Bellwether the next man who laughs over her purse will answer to me." Hannah's face heated. After Mrs. Cobb left, she turned on him. "I do not need threats spoken for me. No, you cannot frighten the town into respecting me. No, then why say it?" His jaw tightened. "Because I was not there when they began." The words entered her slowly. "You cannot be everywhere. I know. Nor can you fight every man who speaks." "I know that too. You make me sound helpless." His expression changed. "No, then stop." defending me as though I am. Noah set the harness strap on the bench. What would you have me do? Ask. The room went quiet. He nodded once. What do you want me to do? Hannah looked at the steam rising from the wash tub. Nothing, she said, though it was not true. Noah accepted the answer because she had asked him to. That hurt in a different way. Shanri brought bitter cold. Cattle crowded the windbreaks. Ice formed inside the lower corners of the windows. Every morning, Noah broke a path from the house to the barn before the children woke. Hannah began leaving his coat by the stove. He began leaving a lantern lit when he knew she would be late in the pantry. One night, the wind tore shingles from the smokehouse. Hannah held the ladder while Noah climbed into the darkness with a hammer tucked through his belt. You will freeze up there, she called. Not yet. That is not reassuring. Was it meant to be? A gust shook the ladder. Hannah tightened both hands around it. Noah looked down. Snow caught in his beard. You can let go, he said. It is steady. I know. She did not. By February, Eli could run again. His cough faded. He and Ruth built sleds from barrel staves and nearly broke their necks on the lower hill. Caleb followed at a dignified distance, claiming he was there to prevent disaster. Hannah's 1-month agreement had become 3. Neither she nor Noah mentioned it. Then a letter arrived. It came in a damp envelope addressed in a hand Hannah recognized from childhood. Her Aunt Margaret Harmon, believed dead after leaving Helena, had written from Oregon. She owned a boarding house near Salem. She had room for Hannah and Eli and offered Hannah work in the kitchen. The letter should have felt like rescue. Instead, Hannah folded it slowly and slipped it into the blue purse. That afternoon, Noah found her mending beside the window. You are quiet. I often am not like this. She pushed the needle through wool. My aunt wrote, the dead one. Apparently she improved. He waited. She has a boarding house in Oregon. Noah's gaze went to the purse beside her chair. She wants you there? Yes. And you want to go? Hannah pulled the thread too tightly. The fabric puckered. I want Eli secure. He is secure here. For the winter, Noah said nothing. The silence became unbearable. I cannot build my life on a favor, she said. It is not a favor. What is it? He looked toward the kitchen, where Ruth's voice drifted through the doorway as she helped Eli sound out words. Work. The answer wounded her more than it should have. Yes, Hannah said. Work. Noah's face closed. When would you leave? After the thaw, he nodded. Then he picked up the wood box and carried it outside, though it was already full. For the next 2 weeks, they became careful with each other. Noah drank coffee standing again. Hannah stopped warming his plate. He spent longer hours in the bunkhouse. She kept to the kitchen and schoolroom. The children noticed. Ruth asked if Hannah was angry. Caleb asked Noah why he was sleeping in the barn office when his own bed remained empty. Neither received a useful answer. The midpoint came on a gray morning when Hannah discovered that her wages had been placed inside the blue purse. $32, more than Noah owed her. She found him saddling the bay. What is this? He glanced at the money. Pay. You paid me through April. Is. It is February. Is. You want me gone. The horse lifted its head at the sharpness in her voice. Noah buckled the cinch. I want you able to choose. You paid me to leave. I paid what I would owe if you stayed, but you think I will not. He turned. The hurt in his eyes was so controlled she nearly missed it. You wrote to the stage office. Hannah's breath caught. How do you know? Ben saw the envelope. I asked the fair T.O. Oregon. Is. Noah looked down at the saddle strap. You should go before the roads worsen. Her pride rose between them like a wall. Very well. She turned and walked back to the house. By noon the trunk was packed. Ruth cried silently in the pantry. Eli refused to put on his coat. Caleb disappeared into the barn loft. Hannah felt as though she were pulling roots from frozen earth. Noah brought the sleigh to the porch. He lifted the trunk aboard without looking at her. Hannah helped Eli onto the seat. The boy's face was rigid. "You said we had a home," he whispered. "We will, we do." Hannah could not answer. Noah took the reins. The road to town cut across the lower pasture. They had traveled less than half a mile when a shout came from behind. Ruth ran through the snow without a coat. Noah stopped the team. Caleb followed, carrying the yellow shawl. Ruth reached the sleigh and seized Hannah's skirt. "You forgot this." She held up a small primer with Hannah's name written inside. Hannah knelt in the snow. "I did not forget you." "That is worse." Caleb handed her the yellow shawl. "It was mine," he said. "Uncle Noah should have given it to you." Noah's face went still. Hannah looked from the shawl to him. "I cannot take this." Caleb's jaw trembled. "You already did." Ruth wrapped both arms around Hannah's neck. Noah climbed down from the sleigh. He stood a few feet away, snow blowing around his boots. Hannah held the child and waited for him to speak. At last, he walked to the back of a sleigh, lifted out the trunk, and set it in the road. "What are you doing?" Hannah asked. "Stopping you." The words were simple. No grand plea, no promise he did not know how to make, only action and one sentence. Hannah rose slowly. "You told me to choose IS. And if I still choose Oregon." Noah's throat worked. "I will drive you." "Then why take down the trunk?" "Because I needed you to know what I choose." The children went quiet. Hannah looked at the man who had paid her debt without asking for gratitude, who had carried her brother through snow, who had listened when she told him not to defend her, even when silence cost him. "What do you choose?" she asked. His eyes held hers. "You hear." That was all. Hannah pressed the yellow shawl to her chest. Then she took Ellie's hand and walked back toward the house. Noah carried the trunk behind them. Nothing was settled after that. Everything was changed. Hannah did not become soft with him overnight. Noah did not suddenly learn to speak his heart. They returned to chores, ledgers, lessons, and winter repairs. But coffee waited again. A plate remained warm by the stove. Noah moved from the bunkhouse into the small downstairs room that had once served as his office. Not because anyone discussed appearances, but because Ruth informed him that only fools slept 200 yards from their own breakfast. In March, the thaw began. Snow loosened from the roof in heavy slides. Creeks filled and roared beneath breaking ice. Mud swallowed wagon wheels to the hubs. With spring came trouble. Silas Bellwether rode to Hawthorne Ridge with 2 men and a folded paper sealed by the county clerk. Noah met him in the yard. Hannah watched from the porch. Bellwether dismounted with care, avoiding the mud on his polished boots. "I have a lien," he announced. Noah took the paper. "On what?" "The south grazing section." "That note was paid?" "Interest was not." Hannah came down the steps. Bellwether smiled when he saw her. "Miss Harmon, still in service?" Hannah ignored him and held out her hand for the paper. Noah gave it to her. Bellwether's smile thinned. She read the document twice. The note had belonged to Noah's sister, Sarah Vale, and her husband. Noah had assumed the debt when he took the ranch and children after their deaths. According to Bellwether, unpaid compound interest had increased the balance to $600. "This figure is false," Hannah said. Bellwether's eyebrows lifted. "You are a lawyer now?" No. I can add dangerous talent in a woman." Noah stepped forward. Hannah touched his sleeve. He stopped. She looked at Bellwether. "Where's the original note?" "In my safe." "Then bring it." "I am under no obligation to carry my records through mud for a housekeeper." "You are, if you mean to take the land." Bellwether glanced at the men beside him. "The auction is set for May 2nd. Noah's hand tightened around the paper. "You cannot auction land before judgment." The circuit judge signed it. Hannah studied the seal. It looked proper. Bellwether put on his hat. $600 by May 1st, Hawthorne T. Otherwise the south section goes. I already have a buyer. His gaze flicked to Hannah. Perhaps your lady can sell another comb. The yard seemed to hold its breath. Noah moved. Hannah caught his arm with both hands. Noah Bellwether laughed and climbed into his saddle. Good day. After he rode away, Noah tore the paper in half. Hannah picked up the pieces. That does not end it. I know. How much cash do you have? $212. Cattle, too thin to sell before summer. Timber, contracted. Caught the bank extend credit. Bellwether sits on the bank board. Hannah carried the paper inside and spread it across the table. Noah stood opposite her. He means to take the south section, she said. Yes, why water? The south land held the widest access to dry Willow Creek. Without it, Hawthorne Ridge could not keep enough cattle through a dry season. Hannah flattened the torn edges. We will find the rest. Noah looked toward the window. There is nothing to find. Then we make it. The next 6 weeks change the ranch. Hannah calculated every expense. She reduced waste, sold preserved fruit, took in mending from town, and arranged for Tomas to repair saddles for neighboring spreads in exchange for a percentage. She taught Caleb to keep inventory and Ruth to stamp paper wrappers for soap. Hannah made from rendered fat and wood ash. Eli collected eggs. Noah cut extra timber despite the spring rains. The ranch hands gave portions of their wages back, though Noah refused twice before accepting. Copper Ridge heard what they were doing. Some laughed, some helped. Mrs. Cobb brought 2 jars of coins saved from washing. Dr. Ames forgave his fee for Isla's illness. The blacksmith paid early for a timber order. Women from the church purchased Hannah's soap and jam, though several avoided her eyes. By the final week of April, they had $493. They were still more than 100 short. Noah sat at the table with the money stacked before him. It is enough to save the house section, he said. Not the water. No, we have 3 days. Hannah? No? He looked at her. She folded the account sheet. You stopped me in the road, she said. Now let me stop you. From what? Giving up? He leaned back. I am trying to save what I can. So am I. You have. The words carried something final. Hannah's chest tightened. What does that mean? Noah's eyes moved around the kitchen. The cream walls, yellow border, bread cooling near the stove, Ruth's reader open on the bench. It means the house is not empty. And the children are not alone. Neither are you. His face closed. That was not part of the bargain. No, she said. It was not. The silence between them trembled. Then a horse galloped into the yard. Caleb ran to the window. Sheriff Amos Lyle, entered with rein on his shoulders and a document in his hand. Bellwether moved the auction, he said. Hannah stood. To go when? Tomorrow morning. He cannot. He petitioned the judge. Claims Hawthorne intends to drive cattle across the disputed section and reduce its value. Noah swore under his breath. Sheriff Lyle removed his hat. I am sorry. Hannah looked at the coins and notes on the table. One night, $107. Bellwether had timed it so no bank, sale, or cattle buyer could help them. Then Hannah remembered the broken button in the blue purse. Not the button itself, but the scrap of paper beneath it. Her father's final letter. She had carried it for 2 years without reading past the first paragraph because his shame had felt too heavy to hold. She retrieved the purse and unfolded the letter. The paper was soft at the creases. Hannah read it all. At the bottom, beneath an apology to her and Eli, her father had written of money hidden before creditors seized the farm. Not much, he said. Railroad shares bought in her mother's name, stored at the Helena Land and Trust Office. Hannah stared at the words. Noah came beside her. What is it? I do not know, she showed him. Sheriff Lyle read over her shoulder. Railroad shares could be worth something. Helena is 2 days away, Noah said. 1 day if the lower pass is clear, the sheriff replied. But the trust office would be closed before she arrives. Hannah looked at the date on the auction notice. Could ownership be confirmed by telegraph? My bay, Sheriff Lyle said. Station agent can send tonight, but the Helena office might not answer until morning. Noah shook his head. Bellwether will hold the auction at 9. Fern we send now? They rode to town in rain. The telegraph office sat beside the depot, its windows glowing amber. Hannah composed the message while the agent tapped it across the territory. Records request Hannah Harmon, daughter of Jacob and Mary Harmon. Stop possible shares held in trust stock. Urgent confirmed value before 9 morning. They waited. No answer came. At midnight, Noah tried to convince Hannah to return to the ranch. She refused. They sat together on a depot bench while rain clicked against the roof. The agent slept at his desk. A freight train groaned through the darkness without stopping. Hannah held the blue purse in her lap. What if the shares are worthless? She asked. Noah leaned forward, forearms on his knees. Then they are worthless. And tomorrow we lose the south section. You sound calm. I am not. She turned toward him. What will you do? Sell half the cattle, dig wells, lease pasture. And if that fails, he looked down the empty tract. Start again. Where? Somewhere. The word frightened her. Would you take the children? Yes. And Eli. Yes. Hannah's breath caught. Noah continued looking at the rails. And you, he said. The quiet night seemed to open around them. You never asked, she whispered. I am asking badly, she almost smiled. What are you asking? He turned then. The old scar beside his eye looked pale in the lamplight. Teo stay, wherever there is. Hannah's fingers tightened around the purse. That is not much of an offer. No house. My be not, no water rights. My be not, no wages. Certainly not. She looked at his rough hands, at the burned scar from a door he had entered too late, at the man who had lived among rooms he could not bear to chain. What would there be? She asked. His voice dropped. Meh. The telegraph machine began to chatter. The agent jerked awake. Hannah and Noah rose together. The message was brief. Shares confirmed Harmon estate. Stop current value $186. Stop identification required for release. Stop funds be wired upon signed witness statement. Sheriff Lyle witnessed Hannah's signature at dawn. The Helena office wired the money to Copper Ridge Bank at 8:47. At 8:50, the bank manager refused to release it. Identification irregularity, Mr. Pritchard said through the brass bars of his counter window. The account is in Mary Harmon's name. I am her daughter. S.O. the telegram claims. You know me? I know of you. Noah stepped forward. Hannah touched his arm. He stopped. The bank manager adjusted his spectacles. We require a birth record or family Bible. Hannah went still. The Bible sat on the shelf at Hawthorne Ridge, 7 miles away. Noah turned toward the door. You cannot make it back by 9, she said. I can try. He ran. The auction began on the steps of Bellwether Mercantile. A crowd gathered beneath dripping awnings. The rain had stopped, but water ran along the muddy street. Sheriff Lyle stood beside the clerk. Bellwether held a black umbrella and smiled as though hosting a picnic. Hannah waited near the counter inside the bank, watching the clock. 8:55. 8:57. At 8:59, Bellwether called for bids. His buyer offered $600. Hannah ran into the street. I object. Bellwether looked toward her. On what grounds? The debt is being paid. The funds are at the bank, not in my hand. The clerk shifted uneasily. Mr. Bellwether, perhaps we could allow no delays. The crowd murmured. Hannah saw the same men who had laughed by the stove months before. Some looked ashamed now. None stepped forward. Bellwether raised his voice. $600 offered. Do I hear 610? A horse thundered at the end of the street. Noah Hawthorne rode through the mud at a dead run, bent low over the bay's neck. The Harmon family Bible was tied against his chest beneath his coat. He pulled the horse to a sliding stop. Blood darkened his left sleeve. Hannah ran to him. What happened? Wire fence. His coat was torn from shoulder to elbow. Beneath it, a deep cut crossed his upper arm. He dismounted unsteadily and handed her the Bible. Go, you need a doctor. Go, Hannah. She ran into the bank. Mr. Pritchard compared the Bible's birth record to the telegram. He took long enough to straighten 3 papers and clean his spectacles. At last, he counted out $186. Hannah carried it into the street. Bellwether was already calling the final bid. $600 won. Hannah pushed through the crowd. Twice, she reached the steps and dropped the money onto the clerk's table. Paid. Coins rolled across the wood. Bellwether's face hardened. The amount due is $600. Noah came up behind her, one hand pressed to his bleeding arm. Hannah added the $493 they had raised. The clerk counted $679. Hannah looked at Bellwether. Your debt, your claimed interest, and the filing costs. Bellwether's mouth went flat. You think this changes what you are? The crowd went silent. Hannah's hands began to shake, but she did not hide them. No, she said. It changes what you own. A few people laughed, not at Hannah this time. Bellwether turned on the crowd. Noah stepped beside her. He was pale from blood loss, but his voice carried across the street. Read the note. The clerk unfolded the original loan paper Bellwether had finally produced for the auction. He read the amount, the property description, and the payment terms. Hannah listened carefully. Then she held out her hand. Again, the clerk looked confused. The interest clause, she said. He read it. Simple interest at 6% annually. Hannah turned to Bellwether. You compounded it. Bellwether's eyes narrowed. That is customary. It is not what the note says. The clerk began calculating. Sheriff Lyle looked over his shoulder. The crowd pressed closer. At last, the clerk cleared his throat. The lawful balance is $432. A ripple moved through the street. Hannah faced Bellwether. You tried to steal the south section. He folded his umbrella. Careful. No. The word came from Noah. He took one step forward, though Hannah felt the tremor in him. She has been careful with you long enough. Bellwether looked at the blood on Noah's sleeve and smiled faintly. You cannot frighten me while you are half dead. Noah's expression did not change. I do not need to. Sheriff Lyle moved between them. Silas Bellwether, I am seizing your ledgers pending review of fraudulent claims. Bellwether's face drained. You have no authority. I have enough. The men who once laughed near the stove now watched without smiling. Sheriff Lyle took Bellwether by the elbow. Bellwether jerked free. Then his gaze fell on Hannah's blue purse, hanging from her wrist. You came into my store begging, he said. Do not forget that. Hannah opened the purse. She took out her mother's silver comb. In the pale morning light, it gleamed like clean water. I remember everything. She placed the comb in her hair. Then she turned away from him. Noah swayed. Hannah caught him before he fell. Dr. Ames stitched Noah's arm in the back room of the bank because it was the nearest dry place with a table. Noah refused whiskey until Hannah poured it into his mouth herself. You could have bled to death, she said. Not likely. You rode through a wire fence. It was difficult to see. You could have slowed down. No. She glared at him. Dr. Ames hid a smile. When the bandage was tied, Noah sat with his head lowered, pale beneath his beard. Hannah knelt in front of him. You saved the land. You found the money. You brought the Bible. You kept it. You were hurt. So were you. Her anger broke, not into tears. Hannah had spent too many years rationing those. It broke into honesty. I thought you would die before I told you. Noah lifted his head. Told me what? Dr. Ames quietly gathered his instruments and left. Hannah heard the door close. She rested her hands on Noah's knees. That Hawthorne Ridge is home. His gray eyes held hers. And that? He asked. And I love the children. His mouth moved. They love you. I love Eli. That is expected. She almost laughed, but fear remained. And I love a man who speaks like every word costs him land. Noah stared at her. The silence lengthened until Hannah's courage began to fail. Then he lifted his uninjured hand and touched the side of her face. I have no good practice at this, he said. I know, I might do it poorly. You wow. His tone brushed her cheek. I love you, Hannah Harmon. There was no poetry in the sentence. There was no need. She leaned her forehead against his. Outside, church bells began to ring 9 times. Late because the bell ringer had abandoned his post for the auction. They married in June, not because the town required an answer to its gossip, not because Hannah needed saving, not because Noah needed a housekeeper. They married because one evening, while setting plates for supper, Hannah found a new account ledger on the table. Across the front, Noah had written Hawthorne and Harmon Ranch. She carried it to the porch, where he was repairing Allie's wooden sled. What is this? She asked. Books, I see that. Shared books? D.O., you propose marriage to every woman who corrects your figures? No, only the difficult ones. Only one. He set aside the hammer. I have land, some cattle, more debt than sense. 2 children who will argue at breakfast, a scarred house, a worse memory. Hannah stood over him waiting. Noah took her hand. And a place for your purse? She looked down at their joined fingers. That is a poor proposal. Yes, ask properly. He did. The wedding took place beneath the cottonwoods near Dry Willow Creek. Ruth wore yellow ribbons. Caleb stood beside Noah with solemn pride. Eli carried the ring and nearly dropped it into the water. Mrs. Cobb baked a spice cake. Dr. Ames brought wildflowers. Sheriff Lyle attended with Bellwether's former ledgers under his arm, because the investigation had not yet ended and he trusted no safe in town. Bellwether did not come. Months later, he issued a public apology as part of a settlement that cost him the store. The new owners removed his name from the sign and hired Hannah to keep the accounts 2 days a month. On her first morning behind the mercantile counter, a young mother entered with 3 hungry children and not enough money for flour. Hannah opened the ledger. What name? She asked, the woman's face filled with shame. Hannah recognized it. She closed the book. Take the flour. I cannot pay until harvest, then pay at harvest. What if the crop fails? Hannah looked toward the doorway. Noah stood outside in the sun, holding the reins of their wagon. He had stepped from the shadows once, when Hannah's purse was empty and the room was full of laughter. Now he waited without interfering, trusting her to choose. Hannah turned back to the woman. Then we will discuss it after the crop fails. At Hawthorne Ridge, summer changed the house. Hannah made curtains from cream mouse, niched a narrow yellow border along the hems. Caleb repaired the broken wheel on the wooden horse. Ruth planted marigolds beneath the kitchen window. Eli grew strong enough to help Noah set new fence posts along the south pasture. The family Bible rested on a shelf in the front room. Beside it sat the blue purse, not hidden, not empty. Inside were 3 coins, a broken button, her father's letter, and a small note in Noah's uneven hand. It read, "Coffee is warm." Years later, when the children were grown and the ranch house had been expanded twice, Hannah still kept the purse. Sometimes visitors asked why. She never told them about every hard winter, every debt paid, every fence mended, or every night Noah woke from dreams of smoke and reached for her hand in the dark. She simply said it reminded her that emptiness could be mistaken for worthlessness. At sunset, Noah often sat with her on the porch overlooking the south pasture. Cattle moved through the golden grass. Marigolds nodded beneath the window. From the kitchen came the clink of plates and the smell of bread. Noah's hair silvered. The scar beside his eye faded. His hands still found hers. And if there is wisdom in their story, Perhaps it is only this. A purse might be empty, a house might be silent, and a heart might stand in shadow so long it forgets the warmth of being seen. But dignity is not measured by coins, and love does not always arrive with beautiful words. Sometimes it puts flour on a counter, carries a sick child through snow, and stays until an empty house becomes a home.